Welcome to Across Africa, our weekly roundup of stories from across the continent. I'm Georgia Calvin-Smith, and coming up, April 7th marked the 25th anniversary of the Rwandan genocide. 800,000 people were slaughtered. Most victims were from the Tutsi community, most perpetrators were Hutu. A quarter of a century on, the government believes that reconciliation has taken firm root. Also, for more than a year now, Chadians have not been able to access social media networks. Critics say it's unacceptable censorship, but the government insists the move's necessary as part of its struggle against terrorism. And the Musée d'Orsay in Paris retitles masterpieces to celebrate the black models they feature. France 24 takes a closer look at the exhibit's efforts to give more prominence to people of colour as subjects of artistic creation. But first, earlier this month, Rwanda marked the 25th anniversary of a genocide that resulted in the murder of 800,000 people, most of whom were Tutsi. In the years following the killings, reconciliation between the Tutsi and Hutu communities seemed almost impossible. But today the government is certain that Rwandans will never turn against each other again. Julia Steers and Bastien Renoir have this report.
This scene was unthinkable 25 years ago. On the left, CYPRIEN, a Hutu who took part in the genocide. On the right, LOUISE, a Tutsi whose family was massacred. Today, they work and live together in what people here call Reconciliation Village.
It allowed us to get to know each other better. The idea is that when we are together, we can talk about what happened.
After serving his prison term, and despite his own fears, the government placed CYPRIEN in this village, a symbol of Rwanda's unity policy.
Given I had killed people, I was afraid that they would want revenge.
There are 8 communities like this one, an artificial construct intended to blend identities.
We are now at a stage of collaboration where Rwandans, regardless of their history, work together and collaborate for reconstruction.
But the government is not behind all of these efforts. Young Rwandans take part in processing their history, even if they didn't experience the genocide. Generation 25 is a show about the legacies left by their parents, whether victims or killers.
Generation 25 basically is addressing the issues young people born after the Rwandan genocide and being part of a history they were never part of. So one big question we ask them, what is memory? Why do we have to remember these painful stories? And we remember painful stories so that this may never repeat.
The show will be held at the Genocide Memorial, an intended symbol of Rwanda's renewal and sense of national unity. But several rights groups say the reconciliation is only surface deep.
For more than a year now, Chadians have not been able to access social media networks. Critics say it's unacceptable censorship. The government insists the move is a necessary part of its struggle against terrorism. Nicolas Chemin has more.
Andreas owns a startup in Jamena that sells products online. His company is suffering from the ban on social media in Chad. Most people here in Chad who use the internet do so via social media. So the censorship against social media has a direct impact on our online sales. That means we lose money and cannot cover our costs. So it's a huge cost for our business. Officially, access to Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, etc. is blocked because of the government's fight against terrorism. But human rights activists point out that the ban appeared a year ago, when demonstrators protested against a change to the constitution that would reinforce the president's powers. The amendment passed and benefited Idriss Déby, who's already been ruling Chad for nearly 30 years. Many Chadians want an end to this ban on social media.
It's not helping Chadians, it's cutting us off from the rest of the world.
It's very difficult for us students. For 1 year now I can't use the internet because of the censorship. It's very difficult, and all this in the context of an economic crisis. It's very hard.
To bypass the ban, some Chadians use virtual private networks or VPNs, but they are costly. Others cross the border and buy Cameroonian SIM cards. Recently, the African Union's Human Rights Commission called on Chadian authorities to remove the ban.
8 years after Tunisia's Jasmine revolution, and freedom of expression in the country has gone from strength to strength. But old habits die hard, especially when it comes to criticising the government. Journalists and activists say that they still worry about the threat of censorship. Our correspondent sent us this report.
Hamza Baloumi is an investigative reporter. This makes him an anomaly on prime-time entertainment television. Baloumi and his team were recently attacked over a story on a Quranic school that had been recruiting children in Regueb in central Tunisia. He was sent letters containing poison and had to be placed under police protection.
Since our report on Regueb, daily life is not the same anymore. But we try to live with it.
Even worse than the threats, Baloumi's show was censored. A judicial decision several weeks ago blocked him from airing a report on a hospital where 15 newborns died in less than a week.
There is a real fear of the emotions that some sensitive subjects might stir up in people, especially those that could shock or anger Tunisian viewers.
NGO Human Rights Watch has also raised concerns about the increasing pressure being put on bloggers and activists. Today, around 7 million Tunisians have Facebook accounts. Users who post controversial content are closely monitored by the government. Activist Amina Mansour spent a night in prison for having criticized Prime Minister Youssef Chehid.
At the beginning, I would receive threats. Stop or you'll be arrested. Don't cite any names, that sort of thing. Then I would get called into the police station and be arrested. But it's a citizen's duty to denounce corruption.
This new judicial control and political pressure are worrying for the country's media sector.
Everyone says they support freedom of expression, free speech for journalists, but when it comes to putting things into practice, nobody lifts a finger.
After threatening to hold a general strike in January, the union was able to negotiate with the government a new framework to safeguard journalists. That framework has yet to go into effect.
It's getting harder and harder for some fishermen in northeastern Nigeria to make a living. A build-up of silt on the banks of Lake Gario is depleting fish stocks and threatening many villagers' only source of income.
Lake Gario in northeast Nigeria is receding. This is because of a phenomenon called siltation. It's caused by the dumping of waste and soil erosion. Less water, fewer fish. The local fishermen are struggling to make ends meet. They earn around $200 a month, half what they used to make.
We will keep doing our best, but if we get a better job, we will definitely change profession.
This lady has been selling fish here for 10 years.
Business is bad compared to before. There are less fish, so the little we have is costly, and there are fewer customers.
Local authorities say nearby rivers must be dredged, but the problem is that is a costly operation.
There is a need for dredging in order to create more avenue for water, for the river to contain more water, so that we have more water for the irrigation activities that we carry out.
It's not just fishing that has been affected. Trade and transport between towns around the lake have suffered as boats find it increasingly hard to access the waters.
An exhibition at the Musée d'Orsay here in Paris is highlighting people of colour in art history. Paintings by some of France's best-known artists have been renamed to acknowledge the black models who inspired the works. Erin Ogunke reports on the show putting underrepresented subjects into the spotlight.
Placing models often relegated to the background, up front and centre, and in doing so breathing new life into the work of some of the Western world's most well-known painters. The exhibition, Black Models from Géricault to Matisse, explores the presence of black figures in primarily French art from the late 18th to the mid-20th century.
I
think it's above all an exploration of history, a history that many French people don't know very well. It's a social, political, and cultural history, because we talk about paintings created by notable artists. Géricault, Manet, Delacroix, Matisse, Gauguin, Degas, they're all here.
From abolitionist paintings by artists including Theodore Géricault, to paintings simply depicting France's growing black community, and even to the more exoticized representations of artists like Paul Gauguin, the diversity of the selected works reflects the differing and evolving views of black figures. The inspiration behind the exhibition, Manet's Olympia, and the generally overlooked presence of Laure, the black model also in the foreground.
Both of these women are relocated from the exotic locales of Orientalist paintings, the locations of empire. The maid figure seems to be almost a colleague. She is proffering flowers, but she's not overtly serving or working or washing her employer. She instead seems to be consulting with her.
The exhibition also examines the contribution of black artists to the evolving portrayal of people of color. An entire section is dedicated to the work of several Harlem Renaissance painters, some of whom undeniably influenced Henri Matisse's later works. And for the occasion, French rapper and spoken word artist MALIK will stage a performance at the museum. Named after the painting Young Black Boy with a Sword, MALIK's show mixes poetry, rap, and visual arts.
Black people are a part of the national community. And talking about them is to make them a part of this country's history, of this continent's history. But the black figure is also a symbolic one. It symbolizes all the people who are relegated to the periphery. Women, people in the suburbs, and those who live in disenfranchised neighborhoods, but also people who live in rural communities.
The curators say they hope the Orsay show will pave the way for the stories of other lesser-known black models and artists to be told.
Well, if you do find yourself in Paris and like to see the exhibition yourself, black models from Géricault to Matisse will be on view at the Musée d'Orsay until July 21st. Well, that is, though, all we have time for Across Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Take care.